I'm Mayor Tommy Roberts, and want to welcome you back to the Mayor's Table. My guests this morning are City Manager Rob Mays and City Attorney Jennifer Brickell. Rob, Jennifer, welcome back to the Mayor's Table.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You both have been kind enough to be guests in the past, and this morning I want to talk about a very important issue to the City of Farmington, as well as a very important issue to most, if not all, municipal governments in the state of New Mexico. It has to do with the process of gross receipts tax collection, remittance, and then redistribution out into the communities where those taxes have been generated in the first place. Rob, let's start with you.
Okay.
Define the problem, describe the problem.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning it. It's not just a unique problem to Farmington. This is a problem that every municipality, frankly every county, those that rely on the state Office of Tax and Revenue to collect our local gross receipt taxes for us and then remit those back to us. There are other states where municipalities and counties collect their own gross receipts tax, and then they can be responsible for those distributions directly. But in the state of New Mexico, we have to depend on the state. As long as I can remember going to municipal league meetings and speaking with other city managers and other government officials, there's a concern with tax and rev, with both having the confidence that the collections are accurate and that they're timely. One of the problems stems from a lack of information because of confidentiality. We never can really be told enough information to give us confidence. So let me give you an example from just last month. We have an average that we were expecting in one sector of our gross receipts. We don't know where the tax money comes from or what businesses pay it. All of a sudden, the distribution for that month was down about $340,000. That represents a several $1 million amended return. We're looking at it and we don't have enough information to know whether or not that's a one-time correction, whether that's a mistake, whether our money was sent somewhere else, or whether this is an ongoing something we should expect, so we can't plan for our revenues accordingly.
And we pay a fee to the Tax and Revenue Department of the State of New Mexico to administer gross receipts tax collection and redistribution back into the communities, and that'd be, I believe, 3% of the gross taxes collected. Is that correct?
Well, the number varies based on different increments that we pay, but we pay in the neighborhood of about over $700,000 a year. The city of Farmington pays for this service, and certainly we should expect to have it right. As we talk to the representatives from Tax and Rev, I want to be clear, our problem is not with the people that work there. It's with the institution and some of the limitations they have on them. As we press for concerns with whether it be auditing services and compliance or communication or research, responding back to us, we're constantly told that they just don't have the resources. They have vacancies, they have positions that have been frozen, and as the state has had financial troubles, they've pulled back funding to this department. But as you said, we pay a fee, and we're told it's estimates that come from the New Mexico Municipal League that the cities combined pay in the neighborhood of $40 million to the state for this service.
Every year.
Every year, on that percentage basis of the money that they collect for us. Yet the legislature only allocates $5 million of that money to the Tax and Rev Department. The other $35 million is diverted to the general fund. So it's insult to injury when we're told that we can't provide the service you need, we can't research and respond back to you timely, we can't perform audits and compliance in the way that we should, because we only get $5 million to our department of the $40 million that the cities and perhaps the counties combined are sending them.
So the problem is that there's a great amount of uncertainty with respect to the accuracy of the accounting for monies that are generated in our community, collected by the state, and then assuring local entities that they're getting the amount of those tax revenues that they're entitled to receive by virtue of the tax rates that exist in the local communities.
That's right.
And there's no good way for us to undo that certainty. There's
Right.
no good way for us to audit and to be sure that we are receiving the proper distributions. And that's a problem for governments because we do need to rely on some level of certainty and accountability.
Well, the basic answer is just trust us. Here's your monthly GRT distribution. We can't tell you who it came from, and you just trust us that it's right. And when we see great variances and timing issues and amended returns and these dollars flow up and down, it's very hard to be good stewards of our tax revenue, to plan appropriately, and to really do any projecting of tax revenue.
Well, there's a very significant problem at the outset in my mind, and that has to do with the administrative fee that's collected. It's collected ostensibly for the purpose of allowing the Tax and Revenue Department to do their job, a component part of which is accounting for these gross receipts tax revenues, seeing that they're properly distributed. And what we know in fact exists is that $40 million is being collected from cities statewide, and only
$5 million.
$5 million is being used for the purpose for which it is designed. We need to fix that. So, Jennifer, how are we going to fix that?
Well, currently, ourselves and 4 other cities, 4 other municipalities have joined a lawsuit in addition to the New Mexico Municipal League to sue the Tax and Revenue Department to obtain access to reports, to obtain access to how this administrative fee is being used, and whether we are actually getting the proper distributions for our gross receipts taxes, which we suspect we are not at this time.
What's the status of that lawsuit?
The status of that lawsuit is we have filed essentially a pre-lawsuit because we filed several Inspection of Public Records Act requests and requests under the statutory authority that allows us to see certain documents. About a year and a half ago, the Tax and Revenue Department has failed to comply with those requests and several court orders demanding that those documents be handed over. There was a hearing on July 3rd. The result of that hearing was Judge Singleton out of Santa Fe, District Court Judge, ordering the Tax and Rev Department to separate out certain confidential information and to hand those reports over to the parties by August 3rd. So we're awaiting those results.
So we've actually done some examination of records that have been provided by the Tax and Rev Department pursuant to the lawsuit at this point. And what have we found as a result of examination of those documents?
What we have found is the examination we had is when each municipality had individual meetings with the Tax and Revenue Department, because they haven't actually handed over documents for us to keep in our own possession yet, is that it appears that there are several provisions of the law they were not following when individuals or taxpayers file amended returns and then they take that money back because the money wasn't supposed to be paid to us, that it's outside of this time limit or statute of limitations they're allowed to do. We found that they're potentially applying the administrative fee to provisions they're not supposed to be applying the administrative fee to, and they're not necessarily matching up money and making sure that we're getting our complete money. If there's an unidentified taxpayer that was supposed to pay GRT, that money isn't necessarily getting sent to the municipalities.
And we found, I think, that the problem's not limited to 5 municipalities, that it's widespread and may be a bigger issue than anyone thought it was going to be.
Yes, sir,
Is that
is correct.
A fair assessment of it?
That is a very fair assessment.
Rob, what are our next steps from the city's perspective? I know that you attended the Municipal League meeting this past week where resolutions were being considered and adopted, and this discussion came up there. What's happening in the world of debate and discussion about how to proceed?
Well, one thing I just want to say before I move into that this isn't the first time that cities and counties, well, I don't know about counties, but cities have been in a position to have to sue the state. No one wants to be in that kind of a position. There have been other dramatic instances where the state has taken back money from cities that were, half their budget for the year, rendering them bankrupt. So it's pretty extreme, and we aren't the only ones. But as you said, in the process of this particular lawsuit that was over a specific taxpayer amended return, that the five cities, including the city of Bloomfield, we're actually partners in that process, working together to resolve this, and then several other cities. It was discovered this administrative fee, and this affects everyone. So as far as next steps, I mean, it's estimated that there could be as much as $100 million out there of overcharge, meaning that We already discussed that the administrative fee wasn't appropriately being designated. They're collecting 40 million, tax and revenue is only getting 5. Now it's been discovered through the process of this other lawsuit that potentially tax and revenue was charging a higher percentage of administrative fee than they were authorized to charge. So thereby bringing into question the legality of some of the money that they have withheld from all the cities. So right now, in terms of one next step, I know that the leadership of the New Mexico Municipal League, the Board of Directors, in discussions with the League of Counties, is having some association of counties is having discussions about how to approach the legislature with this problem. I mean, we aren't wanting to bankrupt our state. You can't have a strong state without strong cities. You can't have strong cities without strong states. This has to be resolved. So that's one front, is discussions on what to do about this potentially $100 million out there that all the cities and counties are owed. Another one is trying to take a step back and say, okay, what can we do to work together on a more positive basis? There's discussions about how to have better communication with the Tax and Rev Department. Again, there may need to be some legislative changes that allows the tax revenue more freedom to be more transparent. What we have asked for years from Municipal League is similar to, again, the state of Colorado. We agree with confidentiality, business trades and secrets, but that 1 or 2 officials from each municipality be trained in the confidentiality laws of our state and be given the authorization to read and understand, so that somebody like you or me, Mayor, if, say, our finance director was allowed to go, when we see $1 million swing in our GRT average distribution, our finance director could go examine that, look at those records, and come back and we could report to leadership here that while I can't report the details, I can report to you that the data is correct. It was an amended return. It would give us a sense of comfort that we have to deal with these $1 million swings or several $100,000 swings, that they're right. That's one avenue. Another avenue is to really urge our legislature to provide the resources necessary for tax and rev to do their job right. Again, our beef is not with the people. Our beef is with the institution that's underfunded, understaffed. There's a lot they can do in terms of providing information for us, but they don't have the resources and people to do it. And then a huge hole is the area of auditing and compliance. There's just not adequate resources placed to that. And any reasonable couple percent increase in compliance and in tax collection could result in tens of millions, if not, many, many more million. I mean, the state collects $6 billion of gross receipts tax a year. 1 to 2 or 3% increase in compliance would add up to $180 million potentially of tax revenue for the state and the city.
Well, to be sure, one of the underlying problems that's not being addressed is compliance, and that goes to the very essence of the duty to collect gross receipts tax on transactions.
That's right.
And the duty of the seller or vendor of those services or products to collect the tax and remit it to the state. Then the next issue is whether or not the state is then redistributing back out into the communities the share that those communities are entitled to by virtue of their tax rates imposed in that jurisdiction. So, but again, to be sure, we're concerned about the level of compliance. We're concerned that some who have a responsibility to collect the tax and remit it to the state are not doing that.
That's right.
And that's a big number.
And we have absolutely no jurisdiction or ability to influence that. The state has held that to themselves, and so we would call upon them to adequately fund the Tax and Rev Department in order to ensure that they collect correctly and distribute correctly.
These would be significant issues to deal with even in good economic times, but they are highlighted in challenging economic times, because then you begin to look for every dollar that you may be entitled to in order to provide the services that you have grown into your system.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, we don't ever want to consider tax increases on everyone if we're not enforcing, if the state is not enforcing the tax collection on the rates that are there. is because if some people aren't paying, ultimately that results in over-collection of everybody else by raising rates. So there's a fairness factor here, and everybody paying what they're supposed to pay will help keep the tax rates down.
Jennifer, let's close out this discussion and let you kind of summarize the legal process. And we've talked a little bit about next steps, but ultimately, where does the legal process take us?
Ultimately, hopefully the legal process, what our end goal is that we get legislative changes and fixes within the Tax and Revenue Department, that municipalities are able to access the information, review the reports, particularly when we're having large swings from month to month in our GRT distribution reports, and that there's a better communication between the municipalities and counties in the Tax and Rev Department, and that we're able to access that information so that we can better budget. That's ultimately the goal.
Well, do either of you have anything else you'd like to add, anything that we haven't discussed that we should about this issue?
I don't.
I do not.
Well, I want to thank you for being here. I think that it's important that our viewers, those who watch this particular venue and get some information from it, to understand the nature of this problem and why it's important to us. And so I think we've communicated that message as well as we can here this morning. We want to thank all of you for joining us on the Mayor's Table once again, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next Monday.